At this point, being a Mets fan is just a Groundhog Day of misery.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. I don't know if you guys are Breaking Bad fans, any of you, but there is a gift that comes from the show. It's one of the pivotal moments at the end of a long 5-season journey through these two characters. You have Walter White, who is the antagonist, but he masquerades as a protagonist for a lot of the show. He's just a horrible person. You have his right-hand man, this guy that gets just dragged through hell, basically, throughout the entire show, Jesse Pinkman. And Jesse Pinkman is exasperated after everything he's been through, and out of frustration, through just tears, says he can't keep getting away with this. And then through those tears, he sparks some rage inside of him, and again he yells, he can't keep getting away with this. That's what it feels like to be a Mets fan. And it's not a singular person, a place, a thing. It is just a conglomerate of emotions and rage that I don't even know what to describe it as at this point. I mean, it is absolutely mind-boggling. Steve Cohen said that in his tweet after the game. It doesn't even compute how a team could lose the way this Mets team does year after year after year. And yeah, you might get a 2022 where they win 100 games and you feel great about it, but then they rip your heart out in the final 3 series of the season, getting swept by the Braves and losing in the playoffs. And yeah, you might have a 2015 where you get a run to the World Series, but oh wait, you lose in horrible fashion there. And that's my lifetime. That's me, a guy that's coming up on my 29th birthday in September, who's only had to endure 2.5 decades of this, where I've been conscious for it of understanding what's going on in front of me. I can't imagine that my dad's generation that's got twice as long in this, and the generation beyond him that's got 3 times that amount. I mean, it is just unbelievable how the Mets lost that game and continue to lose games. For those of you who didn't watch, the Mets played a great baseball game. A great baseball game. Just everything. Everybody connected. The starting line, Francisco Lindor goes 2 for 5 in the game. Leads it off with a double. Score 2 batters in, the Mets have a run. He doubles. Pete Alonso gets a base hit to drive him in. Lindor nearly homered in the 4th inning, where Luis Matos made this insane catch running into the wall. Just another Mets moment. Like, come on, the guy had to catch that ball. But then even in the 9th inning, Lindor comes through with another RBI, or with a RBI hit, scored 1, drove in 1. Pete Alonso had the RBI single in the 1st. He homered in the 7th. Brandon Nimmo gets hit in the face, and luckily he's okay. Shakes it off, even though it looked like he was like a cartoon with the Tweety birds flying around his head, and he steals second base. Obviously didn't score in that moment, but still, Nimmo did something in the game. JD Martinez, Mark Vientos, they go back-to-back, hitting home runs in the 5th. Starling Marte got a hit and scored a run. Jeff McNeil had an RBI single. So each of your top 7 guys did something for you offensively. All of them got hits. Harrison Bader went 0 for 1, but he walked twice. Wasn't a bad game from him. And Tomas Nido, who went 0 for 2, he got a big sac fly. So literally top to bottom, you got contributions from your starting lineup. Christian Scott gave the Mets a quality start. He gives up a run in the 2nd, gives up a run in the 3rd, but retired 12 straight to close out his start. A quality start where he goes 6 innings, and we'll talk about him a little bit more in the next segment, but a really good start from your young starting pitcher, who now is just dealing with what is Mets ace syndrome, where if you pitch well and you're a young guy in particular who's coming up, good luck getting a win. This is a perfect opportunity for him to win a game. Doesn't happen. Edwin Diaz, he shakes off his funk, pitches in the 7th inning, and strikes out 2, touches 99, gives the Mets a scoreless inning. And there was one pitch there where he gives up a ball that Jorge Soler crushed, hit it 100 miles an hour, but the Mets had luck in that moment. It holds up. Starling Marte catches it on the warning track. You think, all right, the Mets are going to win a game. They're finally going to win a damn game. They're up 6-2. and Reed Garrett's coming on for the 8th. And I'm sure there were some Mets fans who were thinking, all right, let's let Garrett get the last 6 outs even, because he's been the best reliever in that bullpen all year. Had only given up 3 earned runs throughout the entire season coming into the outing tonight. And the first 2 batters, it's so Mets being cursed. And again, I don't throw that around lightly. I never wanted to believe there's a curse, but when you have a game like tonight, it's hard not to feel that way deep down, that there's just something against this franchise that they just can't win. So here you go. Garrett's on. First 2 batters, like you could say he blew this one, and he certainly did, but the first 2 hits, a swinging bunt where the ball could have gone foul. It literally hits third base. Just not hit well at all. And then a bloop, to right field. A bloop single that got over the infielders on a pop-up. So the first 2 runners get on that eventually score that, come on, like just ridiculous hits. And then he gets a couple of outs. So you think Garrett's going to get out of it. He's got 2 outs. Then he gives up a double that scores the first run. He walks a batter to load the bases. And sure enough, he falls behind 2-0 to Patrick Bailey, throws him a fastball. He crushes it. Grand slam. 5 earned runs in 1 inning. The Mets are all of a sudden down. And they lose the game. A guy who, again, 3 earned runs over 18 appearances and 26 innings pitched, and he gives up 5 in a single night. Jorge Lopez comes on to pitch the 9th because at this point, the Mets are losing by 1. I guess they thought, don't put Adam Ottavino out there. Try to save him for another day where you might have a chance to win a game late. So they go to Lopez. Lopez gives up a home run. Would it matter that it's a two-run game? The Mets aren't going to score, are they? Well, they do. They score in the bottom of the 9th. Francisco Lindor drives in DJ Stewart, who had a leadoff double. By the way, in that same inning, Brett Beatty pinch hits for Tomas Nido after that. He hits a ball where you thought it might sneak through, and he was actually turning. He wasn't even running straight through. He thought it was going to go into the outfield. So Brett Beatty is making his turn to get towards second on a ground ball, and Tyro Estrada makes a crazy amount of ground, makes a diving stop, spins, fires Beatty out at first base. It advances the runner, but still you would have had a couple guys on, and that would have been the difference. If Beatty gets on, you would have won, but of course he didn't. So then from there, Lindor does drive in the run. Pete Alonso reaches on an error. You caught a break. You thought maybe the Mets have a little bit of luck that comes back to their side because, man, there's been so much luck against them. Maybe, just maybe, they'll find a way to win this game and make you feel a little bit happy on a Friday night after thinking one was in the bag. So he gets on. Brennan Nimmo intentionally walked to load the bases for JD Martinez. One of the best run producers of the last decade comes up with a situation where his team desperately needs him to just hit a damn fly ball. Hit a fly ball, tie ball game. JD Martinez strikes out with the bases loaded. Brutal. Then Mark Vientos comes up. Starts off 3-0. All right, 3-0. And none of those pitches were anywhere close to the zone. All right, just walk them. You get him in extra innings, right? Mark Vientos, arguably the highest hitter on the Mets. Maybe he's going to come through. Maybe he can hit a grand slam. Well, close call on the 4th pitch. Called a strike. Could have been a ball, but it was a strike. It was touching the zone, but definitely a really tight one. Then he swung through a cutter, so now it's a full count. And Mark Vientos at least doesn't strike out. Got to bless him for that. Hits a slow roller, and you think, oh my God, the Mets are going to score. He's going to beat this out. But sure enough, he hits it to, arguably the best third baseman in baseball at coming in on the ball, or at least one of, who, of course, Matt Chapman fields the ball cleanly with the bare hand, puts a ton on a throw. He's got an unbelievable arm, and he gets Mark Vientos by a damn step. You lose by a step. The Mets have homered 3 times in the last 3 games. So 3 consecutive games with 3 home runs as a team, each of those games. For the first time in franchise history, they have lost all 3 of those games. For a franchise that has gone through a lot. When you hit 3 home runs in a game, you win that game 8-9 times out of 10. Honestly. And the Mets have found a way against all odds to do that 3 times in a row to actually lose that game. It does not compute. It can't be real. Like, wake us up from this nightmare of a season that is followed from another nightmare of a season last year from a team that how did the Mets win 101 2 years ago A team that was very similar to this one. Yes, they had Max Scherzer and they had Chris Bassett, and it's a different pitching staff, but I don't understand it. I really don't. And they're only the fifth team in MLB history that has had such a streak. That's a long time, MLB history. A lot of teams that I'm sure have had 3 home runs in a row in 3 consecutive games. It's happened who knows how many times, but only 5 of them have ever resulted in a 3-game losing streak. And the Mets are the 5th. They joined that elite group, or that pitiful group. I'm at a loss for words, yet here I am still talking. So let's go through what went right for Christian Scott and Edwin Diaz, because hey, let's look at something that's kind of positive. And then we're going to focus on the downside. Is Reed Garrett not the pitcher we thought he was? I'm going to get into all of that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. I know what you're thinking. Why would I want to go to Citi Field right now? You see that game tonight? Well, I'll tell you what, there are people in that ballpark that will never forget being there for this game. And yes, it's not the best memory, but you know what? Those are the memories that stick with you. I'll tell you what, I've gone to a lot of games with my dad over the years, and one game that stands out to me is when Jacob Stallings hit a grand slam off Edwin Diaz. It happens, and you could be there for those things, and those are the stories that'll carry you as a Mets fan. May not carry you, but stories that you'll hold with you, and that you can tell your friends and joke about for years. Really, though, this is the time to go to Game Time and get into the ballpark, because Citi Field is always a great place to be. The food's amazing, and the Mets are due to turn things around, and people right now are selling their tickets for low prices. This is the best place to go for last-minute tickets. You can get great deals, and you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. So if you have a last-minute decision, you decide to go to the game, you hop on the train, you pull up the app, you're going to get yourself really good deals. You can look at where you're going to sit right in the app before you buy your tickets, so you know exactly what to expect before you arrive. And all-in prices up front are there, so you're not hit with any hidden fees. It's so easy to buy tickets. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, if you want to commiserate in your sorrows as a Mets fan, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. Join our texting community. This is where you get updates from me anytime something breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, or you can just send me some text about how much the Mets are disappointing you right now. I actually had to log off of subtext tonight. After the game, I just said, I'm stepping away. In the morning, I will go through all of my different texts from the Locked On Mets insiders as we all talk about a frustrating time to be a Mets fan. I appreciate all of you. Subscribe if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider. Find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, Christian Scott pitched tonight, and that's a silver lining because he threw the ball pretty well. It was a Jacob deGrommian start in the sense that it was almost akin to where DeGrom didn't have it in the NLDS all the way back in 2015. But all of a sudden you look up and he's pitching in the 6th inning. Like it was the same thing with Christian Scott. He wasn't getting the same whiffs that he typically could. And early in the game, it didn't feel like he was in complete control. He was still trying to find it. Gives up a home run on a hanging sweeper to Jorge Soler in the 2nd inning. Gives up a ball where it was a triple. It's ruled a triple, but Starling Marte should have fielded that ball cleanly or shouldn't have kind of booted around like he did. He lets it get past him. It could have been a single or a double. It turns into a triple, and then he gives up a run on a ground out. But from that moment on, it was like something clicked in him where that shouldn't have happened, and Christian Scott just dialed it up. And he retires the last 12 batters that he faces. And the 5th inning in particular is what jumped out to me. He struck out the side. All of them were on fastballs. And all of them, each one, if I'm not mistaken, were swinging. These guys knew a fastball was coming. They were geared up for it. They put their A swing out there trying to drive the ball a mile like Jorge Soler did. And they all came up empty. You saw how good Christian Scott's fastball can be in this start. It's like, I don't have my sweeper today. I don't got the breaking stuff going. I'm just going to get by with the fastball. And I talked about that months ago, right? When we were talking about Christian Scott in the offseason, even dating back to the end of last year. I've said, look, the fact that Christian Scott has an MLB fastball and a really good one, that's going to allow him to survive in the big leagues. And you saw it tonight. This guy is, I don't know if I'd already say the best pitcher in this rotation because Luis Severino has been throwing the ball really well, but he's one of the best too because there aren't a lot of guys in this Mets rotation that could not have their best stuff and get through 6 innings with a quality start. But Christian Scott did that. So it's one thing to look forward to throughout this season. One day a week, we're going to get to watch Christian Scott take the mound, and you're seeing a guy that offers a promise into the future because it's hard to buy into this team doing anything in 2024, but the 2025 Mets can be really exciting, and Christian Scott will be at the forefront of that. Now, Edwin Diaz looked good tonight as well, though. He touched 99. He got 3 whiffs on the 5 swings that he had against him across both of his 2 pitches. He struck out 2 of the 4 batters that he faced. But I will say Jorge Soler nearly got him. I mean, he hit a ball 100 miles per hour off the bat, just got under it a bit. Starling Marte fielded it on the warning track. So it's one of those moments where it could have gone the other way and Diaz would have lost some confidence. It just becomes a long out. And the good thing is Edwin could be a little bit more confident moving forward that his stuff is still good. It's still going to play. And honestly, I think he's got to return to that closer role because I think the Mets have to set their bullpen back in order. Problem with that is that Edwin Diaz has not pitched well in back-to-backs this year. So I don't know if I would say to make that switch tomorrow or today as you're listening to this, but I do believe that in short order here, you got to return Diaz to the 9th because then it sets Reed Garrett and Adam Ottavino and these other guys in line behind him. I think that's what the Mets have to do right now. The Garrett situation tonight, though, I think you can make an argument the Mets should have pulled him, that Carlos Mendoza, after he gave up the double, should have grabbed the hook on Garrett. But again, if you're looking at what he was watching, it was 2 cue ball hits, and then he got a couple of outs. So you thought, all right, the stuff is still playing. Yes, he gave up a double, but some bad luck to be in the position that he was to give up that first run. Then he walks a batter, though. And Reed Garrett threw 30 pitches the other day. Yes, he got a day off, but he threw a lot of pitches. Now he was up to, I think, 22 pitches before that last batter. And he starts off 2-0. Not that you pull him mid-batter, but I think they had Adam Ottavino ready. I think they should have grabbed him. But again, as much as I want to nitpick on Mendoza on that one and say you should have taken him out of the game, this is a guy that you have won a lot with it. Like, he has been the answer so many times. You trust him. It's not like his stuff was terrible. He said after the game that he let those early hits get to him a little bit. He got out of his own game plan and he started falling behind hitters. And that's a recipe for disaster. But I will note, he has been a lot more hittable lately. Like, you'll look at the ERA this month, which is over 5. Now that's all due to tonight. You give up 5 runs in an outing, it's going to balloon your ERA. And it says something about Reed Garrett. His ERA sits at 2.67 after giving up 5 runs. But you look at April, when he was still an unknown guy, people didn't know what he had. So it was a little bit easier on him as far as the scouting report wasn't out there. He allowed 8 hits in 15 2/3 innings pitched. In May, he's allowed 15 hits in 11 1/3. Now, 4 of those were tonight. 5 of the 7 runs he's given out this month were tonight. But batters are hitting 326 against Reed Garrett this month. 326. Now, you've had plenty of cue ball hits. I'm sure luck is going to turn back in Garrett's favor soon. But it's worth noting. And you say, well, he gave it 4 hits tonight. So is it that surprising he's giving up hits at a 326 clip? Before tonight, batters are hitting 282 against Reed Garrett this month. So he's not as locked down as he was. And when you're in that position, again, this is where I think the Mets should make a move. Have Diaz back in the closer role. Set things in order. Losing Brooks Raley really kills the Mets. And honestly, I think Adrian Hauser having this 6th starter in limbo role, I really think that's hurting the Mets too. Because right now you could have an extra arm in that bullpen. Now, who that arm would be, how much would they help? I don't know, but it would be nice to just have a full bullpen while you still can. Because David Peterson should return to the rotation on Wednesday. You can have another arm in that pen for the rest of this weekend, the first couple days of next week. And what makes me nervous about this is if you're not going to do that, and if we don't see Hauser pitching in any of these games, and he's still coming off a start the other day, so it's not like he's going to be available anytime soon. You're playing a man down, and it makes me nervous that they're going to actually give Hauser another start, which feels like giving a game away. Now, David Peterson didn't look amazing when he started tonight in Syracuse. Went 4 innings, allowed 3 runs, although only 2 of them were earned. off of 7 hits, walked 1, struck out 6. But I still would want to give David Peterson the ball before Adrian Hauser on Wednesday, and he is in line now after starting on Friday. He got off day on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. He'll be on regular rest for a start on Wednesday, and he was up to 90 pitches or 89 pitches tonight. So you can't really give him another rehab start when he's eligible to come off of the 60 and say he's still hurt. He's clearly healthy and ready to go. So we'll see what the Mets do. I hope that Peterson makes that start on Wednesday. That would be the number one priority, I would say, above all else. I just don't want to see Hauser make a start. But really, I don't see the point in having Hauser on this team until then and then cutting some arm out of your bullpen. We'll see what they decide to do. But that's just another thing on the pitching front to note here. Peterson, ready to return on Wednesday. Are they really going to ride this thing out? I was pretty shocked that the Mets didn't make any roster moves before this game. And I want to talk about that next, as well as comments David Stearns made during the broadcast and a couple tweets by Steve Cohen after the game. So we'll get to that, all that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining Supply House's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. So the New York Mets did not make any roster moves before the game on Friday. Brett Baty still on the bench, and Adrian Hauser still in the bullpen or the rotation. I was more surprised about Baty than Hauser. I'm trying to speak Hauser off this team into existence. It's not really working. The Joey Wendell thing worked, but it took some time there. When it comes to Brett Baty, though, I think all of us were sort of assuming, right? Vientos is clearly the starting third baseman. He's got to play every day. I'm sorry. This guy, he is tearing the cover off the ball. He right now feels like the best hitter in this lineup at times. You can't pull him for Brett Baty to get a start. You just can't. And we might see it for all we know. I mean, today it was a start against a lefty. I think the rest of this series, you're getting a couple righties, Jordan Hicks and Logan Webb. Tough matchups. I don't think Brett Baty is going to fare good in those. So in my eyes, you need Vientos starting at third base. It just makes too much sense. How much longer are you going to keep Brett Baty in a bench role? It doesn't really line up for me. I don't know if they're waiting to see Vientos struggle a little bit and get Baty back in there. If they feel like just Baty's bat off the bench is more valuable than whatever they have in AAA. But, I mean, that doesn't necessarily line up because in AAA, you got hitters that are swinging the bat pretty well. You could make a note that it does give your team a little bit more of a complement aspect because you have a lefty in Baty that could complement Vientos. Baty, a guy that gives you better defense at third base. You could run for him at certain, at moments of the game if you really needed to. If, let's just say, Mark Vientos ripped a double in a tie game in the 9th inning, maybe you would pinch run Brett Baty or pinch run Tyrone Taylor. And then you have Baty that can go into the game and play third base after it. I get it in some respects, but in more, I look at the fact that this is a Mets team that we don't really know where they're going this year, but it feels like they're going the wrong direction, and it's imperative to develop your young players. I don't think you're developing Brett Baty on the bench. I think Mark Vientos is getting a lot of development right now, and he's showing himself to be a big league piece potentially for the future. Brett Baty's got to go down, fix that swing, and then come back up, and maybe by the time that you get to the trade deadline, maybe you clear JD Martinez or Pete Alonso gets traded like I've talked about already. And then that gives you the opportunity down the stretch in the final 2 months to play these guys every day. But for now, I just don't get it. And I wonder how much longer they're going to stick to it. Now, David Stearns' comments. He was in the booth for the bottom of the 3rd inning, I believe. It was the inning that Nimmo wore one on the face, or the face mask, I should say. But yeah, he didn't get a lot from that little spot. But he did say that right now things just can't line up for the Mets, that they've had stretches where, you're getting good starting pitching or your lineup is producing, but then the bullpen's not. It's funny he said that considering what happened in this game where everything lined up but your bullpen. But it's frustrating. And I think this, in a lot of ways, it's like a really rough transition back into being a Mets fan for David Stearns. Like, he was a Mets fan growing up. He interned with the Mets, his first job in baseball. He's got away from it, and whatever team you're working for is the team you're rooting for, right? So he's been a Brewers fan as the guy who's running the Brewers for a long time, and now he's getting, hit with that, that cruel, harsh reality. Oh, you're back to being a Met, dude, and this is what it's like. You're putting together. I'm sure he's got a process in place. I know he's got a process in place that worked in Milwaukee that he's trying to implement here, and he's just banging his head against the wall. Like, why isn't this working? It's because you're with the Mets now. Yeah, frustrating. He talked about young players, said, with Acuna, swings looking better, making good decisions in the box. So that's encouraging. Mentioned that Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert are making their way back, but they're still not back yet. Interesting comment where he said all will make an impact either this year or next year in the big leagues. So down the line, I think you can sort of envision a tear down Mets situation where young guys are up in the second half. And honestly, considering where you're at right now, I'm almost looking forward to fast forward to August. And I can maybe watch Acuna play second, Mark Vientos play first, Brett Beatty play third. Who knows? Maybe Drew Gilbert or Jet Williams is healthy at that point and they stick him in the outfield. I don't know. I'd just be happy to watch the kids because this is just getting so frustrating. But at the same time, this is still information gathering mode, as David Stearns said on the broadcast. So we don't have to make any decisions right now. The broadcasting, Gary Cohen, Darling, someone mentioned how last year the struggles happened in June. This year they're happening in May. So there is that time. Like, last year we saw an Eduardo Escobar trade early to clear room for Brett Beatty. And really it was more the Angels were in a position where they were desperate in Shohei Ohtani's last year to get talent. They made two trades at an odd time, getting Eduardo Escobar and Mike Moustakas to try to fill that gap to the deadline. So the Mets got a prospect who, funny enough, if I'm not mistaken, that was Coleman Crow, I believe. So yeah, they got the prospect that they turned into Adrian Hauser and Tyrone Taylor out of all that. So Eduardo Escobar turns into some bad Hauser starts, funny enough. But like David Stern said, this is about gathering information. They're not going to make any concrete directional decisions now, but the information you're gathering hasn't been good. And we'll see. The Mets got 2 months. 2 months. The guys in that clubhouse, they got 2 months to start winning baseball games. And 95% of the roster did their job tonight. And one guy, Reed Garrett, unfortunately, had a bad night. A guy who has been on all year for the most part, had some bad luck and then gives up the brutal pitch that ends up crippling the Mets in this one. And you just have to flip the page to another game and hope that the Mets can find their way to some level of competitiveness and some level of resolve that allows them to get back in it a little bit. Just for our general sanity as Mets fans, that's actually where I'll close. Almost forgot to mention the tweets from Steve Cohen today. First, he said, looking forward, this was early in the day. Steve Cohen had a day off. I'm sure he enjoyed that day off of Mets baseball. You just got to relax, right? Wakes up in the morning, says, you know what? I'm looking forward to our 10-game homestand starting tonight. LGM, we are experimenting with our new Artist Series giveaway tomorrow. Enjoy the Joel Messler created tote bag. Feedback appreciated. So, hey, after tonight, if you weren't thinking about it, go to Game Time, get those cheap seats, and get the Joel Messler tote bag. Don't know what that looks like, but I'm sure it's beautiful. Then hours later after the Mets game, what a stretch. And this guy, look, Steve Cohen's good at a lot of things. As an editor, I got to say, punctuation, not one of them. What a stretch, space, comma. Just not a good texter, I guess. It's always either too many spaces or not enough. Mind-boggling, space, period. No space, let me just read it and stop being a snob about the grammar. What a stretch, mind-boggling. I know how disheartening this is for our fans. TY, which is thank you. Thank you for caring so much. Anyone who blames this guy, man, I saw Brandon Tierney on the Fan who was blaming Steve Cohen as a bad owner. Like, come on, dude. Like, if you want bad baseball takes, watch BT and Sal on the radio. And I don't even see it. I don't watch it. But then you see the clips that make their way to social media. And I guess that's what they're doing. They're trying to get eyes on their show. But come on, Steve Cohen's the problem. All this guy does is care and invest in this team. And I do believe in the long run, they're going to find a way to win because Steve Cohen's determined to. And when you put this much resources, you have this many smart baseball people around the team, just the cream's eventually going to rise to the top. And I'm dreaming of a 2025 Mets rotation of Christian Scott, Blade Tidwell, Brandon Sproat, and Kodai Senga. Well, I guess we'll talk about it tomorrow's show because he's had a setback, got a cortisone shot in his tricep or whatever. He had a nerve issue in his triceps. We'll talk about it if I do decide to record tomorrow night. I'll try to squeeze that in the show. But I'm envisioning what 2025 is going to be, and maybe that's the year the Mets start to shake all of this off and start to be a team that can build towards sustainable winning. But right now, all that's sustainable is frustration as a Mets fan. As I open the show in the cold open, it's like a Groundhog Day of misery. And we're all going to sign up. We're all going to tune in, watch the Mets against the Giants again on Saturday night, and let them potentially ruin our weekend. That's what I love about you all. That's why I love Mets fans, because like Steve Cohen said, we care. It's that simple. Appreciate all of you caring enough to tune into this show. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Trying to make a push to 9,000 subs. So I appreciate all of you who continue to hit that button and subscribe. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be part of our texting service, be a Locked On Mets insider. Find the link in the episode description. Now, also appreciate you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. For your second watch, head over to YouTube to the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Locked On Sports Today. They're breaking down all the latest in the NBA and NHL playoffs. So follow Locked On Sports Today 24/7 on YouTube.